Welcome to Learn the Word, the daily Bible teaching program of Calvary Chapel of Delta and Pastor Doug McLean. As we come to 2 Samuel chapter 6, it was a good time for the nation of Israel. But in today's message, we'll see how David learned the importance of doing the Lord's work the Lord's way.
With David as king just for a short time, leading God's people, he had taken Jerusalem as a capital for the nation. And then he led the people to back-to-back victories over the Philistines. And the Philistines had been making life very difficult for Israel since the days of Samson. And so this was a great day, great time for Israel. But the Philistines, remember, they had done so much damage. They were the ones that captured the Ark of the Covenant back in 1 Samuel chapter 4, and they had effectively brought the worship system that God designed that was being observed there in Shiloh, they brought it to an end. And as a result, after that, the observation was made, the conclusion was drawn in 1 Samuel 4:22 that the glory had departed from Israel. And although the ark had been recovered, the glory had not been restored. Worship, the way that God had designed, was never resumed until this point. On top of that, the Philistines, who had done that damage, also had recently killed King Saul and defeated the armies of Israel there on Mount Gilboa, and they were occupying a good portion of the land of Israel. And so to now have two back-to-back victories over the Philistines, it was a great moment for Israel. It was a good time, and David saw this as an opportunity to restore the glory, to reestablish what the Philistines wrecked so many years before. Actually, almost 70 years before. And that's where we begin, chapter 6, verse 1. Again, David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, whose name is called by the name, the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim. David chose 30,000 men. These were elite, handpicked soldiers. That's the idea. He didn't do this to take Jerusalem from the Jebusites. He didn't do this to go out against the Philistines either time. This was something different. A big event in David's eyes, and apparently he felt he could face a huge challenge, a potential attack, so he put together this elite fighting force, 30,000 chosen men. Now, in the account of this in 1 Chronicles 13, we're told that David also sent out messengers over all of Israel to gather them together for this big event. The plan was to bring up the ark of God. The ark is mentioned 15 times in the 23 verses that are before us in this chapter. The ark was a wooden box covered with gold with a solid gold lid, and it contained the 2 stone tablets upon which the 10 commandments were written. The Lord had given the design to Moses on Mount Sinai, and the Lord made promises concerning that ark. The Lord promised that from above that ark, he would meet with his people and he would speak to his people. The Lord said to Moses, Exodus 25:22, Exodus 25:22, he said, "And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim, which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I give you in commandment to the children of Israel." So the Lord said, this is the place where I will speak with you, I will meet with you, we'll have an appointment here. And it was this place where he would manifest his presence in a very unique way. It was like the Lord's throne, founded on truth. His commandments were the foundation. Covered in mercy, the lid was called the mercy seat, which was covered in blood. And the Lord said, I will meet you there. Typically, it was kept in the Holy of Holies, in the tabernacle. And only one man, the high priest, could go in once a year to apply atoning blood to the mercy seat. So most of the time it was out of view. The people couldn't see it, but they knew he was in there. Not in the box, but over the ark in the Holy of Holies. Now, the ark was last mentioned in 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 1, as the word reported that the men of Kiriath Jearim took the ark and brought it to the house of Abinadab. Baal Judah is that same place, just a different name for it, 8 miles west of Jerusalem. The ark had been there for about 70 years. The last 20 years of Samuel's prophetic ministry, his judgeship, the 40 years of Saul's reign, and at least the first 7 years of David's reign as he was reigning from Hebron. So about 70 years. It had been there since the Philistines returned it. And the men of Beth Shemesh had a bad experience with it, and they sent it to Kiriath Jearim. So David had this desire to bring the ark into the capital. He wanted the presence of the Lord to be the very center of their national life. And the Lord had promised in Deuteronomy chapter 12 and verse 11, Deuteronomy 12:11, that he would appoint a place to make his name abide. In other words, one central place where worship would occur. And as people came to that one central place and they saw the sacrifices being offered and they saw the priestly ministry being conducted, that they would be able to get to know who God is, that they would be able to understand truth about God. It had been in Shiloh for years, and Israel had come 3 times a year to worship, taken by the Philistines, now in exile for 70 years, and then David here saying that place needs to be Jerusalem, rightly recognizing that that place should be Jerusalem. And so with the ark in the center of the nation would be constantly reminded that they were God's people, and that although they had a king, their king was under the King of Kings, that the Lord was their authority, that they should look to him and rely on him, and he would be the center of everything. And his name, his reputation, his identity, his authority, the Lord of heaven's armies, the Lord of hosts, would be known to the people. And he would be central. What an awesome desire that David had, to get the Lord back into the center of the nation, because it had been put away for 40 years, the ark, out of view. And David looked at this and said, this has to be corrected. Their nation had struggled. The nation was divided. The nation had been defeated. And David said, we need to get the Lord back into the center of everything that's happening for us as God's people. Again, a great desire. Wouldn't you love to see it? In our nation, the Lord to be in the center of everything, established, that we would all recognize that we have a greater king, we're under a greater authority. It's something we're going to see one day, not just in our nation, but in the world, when the Lord answers our prayer that he taught us to pray. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. That day is coming. So great desire. This is how David did it. Take note, look at verse 3. So they set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drove the new cart. So David tried to honor the ark. He wanted to bring it into Jerusalem in style. So he built a new cart, like the Philistines had used to send it back to Israel some 70 years before. 1 Samuel chapter 6. And these two brothers that grew up around the ark, Uzzah, which means strength, and Ahio, which means brotherly. They were the ones that were driving the cart at first. Verse 4. And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Accompanying the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. Then David and all the house of Israel played music before the Lord on all kinds of instruments of fir wood, on harps, on stringed instruments, on tambourines, on sistrums, and on cymbals. So Ahio got out of the cart and went before the ark. So the guy named Brotherly, he's out in front. He's the guy shaking everybody's hands and waving and giving high fives. And one sister in the Lord told me, and throwing candy to the crowd. And then the strong man was driving the cart, Uzzah. He was driving the cart, in control. Big celebration, huge production, great rejoicing. David starts playing music and everyone joins in. It was bring your guitar to church Sunday. And if you don't have a guitar, bring your tambourine, bring your cymbals, bring your hand drum. And everybody was into it. And it felt good. It seemed right. Everything was going well. And then, verse 6. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. Now, a threshing floor is a flat spot where the grain was gathered, stacked, and then they'd take a sled over, a threshing sled, and they'd break it up, and then they would take the grain and throw it into the air, and the chaff would blow away and the grain would fall. And that whole process took place on this flat piece of ground, usually up on a mountain or a hill, called a threshing floor. So arriving at this particular threshing floor, which is mentioned nowhere else in Scripture, the oxen stumbled, the ark began to slide or shift, and Uzzah, the strong man who was controlling and driving, he puts his hand on it to stabilize it, to keep it from falling, to keep it from shifting. He used his strength because they hit a bump in the road. Verse 7. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died. He died there by the ark. That brought an end to the celebration, as the Lord took action against this man who touched the ark. The Lord was angry, we're told, and he took action. Reminds me of Ananias and Sapphira. Acts chapter 5, New Testament. The Lord took them out as well. Here the Lord struck Uzzah and he died, verse 8. And David became angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day. And he said, how can the ark of the Lord come to me? David was angry. He was frustrated. He was angry about what happened. And he called it the Lord's outbreak. That's what Perez Uzzah means, the outburst against Uzzah. He saw Uzzah as a victim, and admittedly, he didn't understand what happened. He thought he was doing a good thing. He thought he was doing the right thing, and then this guy dies. And we're told David was afraid of the Lord. There was a heightened sense of respect for the Lord. And that was something that God wanted his kings to possess. Deuteronomy chapter 17, before the Lord's people entered into the land, through Moses, the Lord gave instructions regarding kings. He knew they would want a king one day. He gave instructions regarding those kings. Deuteronomy 17, 18 to 19, he said this specifically. Deuteronomy 17, 18 and 19, he said, also it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom that he shall write for himself a copy of this law in a book from the one before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, with the king, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God and to be careful to observe all the words of this law and these statutes. So that fear of God was something that the Lord wanted his kings to have, a respect for God. So David had a good desire here in chapter 6 to get the ark to Jerusalem, to bring the recognized presence of the Lord and the worship of the Lord back into the center of the nation. But David had taken this too casually. He had taken it casually. In fact, later on, in 1 Chronicles 15, verse 13, and looking back on this event, 1 Chronicles 15:13, he said, "The Lord our God broke out against us because we did not consult him regarding the proper order." So later he would admit, we blew it because we didn't consult him about this. And he didn't consult the Lord because he wasn't fearing the Lord as he should have. He didn't have a proper respect for the Lord that he should have at this point. Now, he had had victory upon victory. Everything was going well. Everything was good. But evidently, he took it too casually. He took it too casually. And so this was a hard and costly lesson. But this was the moment that he started asking the question, how can the ark of God come to me? And it wasn't an expression of frustration. It was a sincere question. He wanted to know. An honest question. And he began to seek the answer in God's word. Historically, though the Philistines had moved the ark on a cart, they weren't God's people. They didn't have the word, which gave specific instruction regarding moving the ark. Although David could have discovered or been reminded of what happened at Beth Shemesh in 1 Samuel 6, verse 19, if you remember, the men of Beth Shemesh looked into the ark, and the Lord struck the men of Beth Shemesh because they looked into it, they touched it and looked at it, which they shouldn't have done. This was different. Uzzah wasn't looking into the ark. He was just putting his hand to it to stabilize it. So, searching the word, this is what he discovered. Take note. The duty of moving the ark was assigned specifically to one family, the Kohathites. You can see that in Numbers 3, 30 and 31. Numbers 3, 30 and 31, a specific family, the Kohathites. Numbers 4, verse 15 says this, "And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary," which would include the ark, "when the camp is set to go, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them, but they shall not touch any holy thing lest they die." So they couldn't touch it directly. It had poles that were inserted in rings that were designed to carry the ark without touching it. Exodus 25, 12 to 15 tells us that. That's Exodus 25, 12 to 15. And then Numbers chapter 7, verses 9 and 10 indicates that they were to carry the ark on their shoulders and not put it on a cart. That's Numbers 7, 9 to 10. No carts. So the Lord had been very specific, but David missed it. And a man died because of it. So this threshing floor became a place of judgment. It became a place of crushing, of winnowing, of separating. And he learned a hard but painful lesson. That the Lord is concerned with the way things are done. He's concerned with the means as well as the end. You'll hear people say, well, the end justifies the means, and it doesn't. It's important to fear the Lord. It's important to respect the Lord and not to take things too casually. He's with us, but he's still the Lord, and we should have great reverence and respect for him. There's a very important lesson that I'd like you to see. There's a fundamental verse that we emphasize that includes this truth. John 14, verse 6. John 14, 6, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He said he's the way. So he's very much concerned about the way we do things, not just the fact that we do them. So, for example, you might say, I want to lead my family in the Lord. Say, I want to teach my kids to follow Jesus. Or you might say, I want to share the gospel with my coworkers, with my neighbors, with my friends. All those things are great. Or I want to teach a Bible study. Good desires. Good purposes. Good. We can do many good things. But if you try to do good things the wrong way, you can actually end up working against what you're trying to accomplish. 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13 says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. If I'm speaking great words, but I'm not doing it with love, I'm just making a lot of noise and getting annoying. I mean, you don't use a cymbal in your private worship time. At least I don't. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow my goods, all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Same concept. If I speak the truth, which is a good thing to do, but I don't speak the truth in love, then my words can become counterproductive. If I'm trying to lead my home, for example, yet I'm being impatient or unkind, then I can kill what I'm trying to accomplish. If I'm trying to share the gospel, but I'm doing it rudely, then I can kill what I'm trying to accomplish. I can blow my witness. If I want to represent the Lord in the situation, but then I compromise to stay in the situation to do it, then I can kill what I'm trying to accomplish. See, the Lord's just as concerned about the way we do things as our goal or our intention that we want to accomplish. So David started asking the question, and rightly so, how can the ark of the Lord come to me? And he searched the word and began to discover answers. And you can do the same thing. You can say, well, Lord, I want to do this, but how do I do it? And you can seek his word and you will discover answers. Now, this went on for David for some 3 months. And we're told during this time, verse 10, David would not move the ark of the Lord with him into the city of David, but David took it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. So David wasn't disobeying here by choosing not to move the ark. The Lord hadn't commanded the move. It was something that he wanted to do from his heart. So it was okay for him to set this aside. He's not stubbornly resisting God's will. He put the ark of the Lord in the house of Obed-Edom, and he began to seek answers to his questions. The man Obed-Edom, his name Obed-Edom the Gittite, particularly interests me. Obed-Edom means servant of Edom. Edom is another name for Esau, Jacob's brother. And Edom became the name then of the nation of Edom, which is south and east of the Dead Sea, part of what we call Jordan today. You'll see in Scripture the Edomites. So Obed-Edom, the servant of Edom. That's significant, but then add to it that he's called the Gittite. By definition, Gittite means from Gath, and Gath was a Philistine city. So the servant of Edom from Gath.
When Israel failed to bring the ark into Jerusalem their way, it rested for a time in the house of a Gentile. And as we'll see next time, this paints a beautiful picture of what the Lord is doing with His people today. So be sure to join us tomorrow. Now, in the meantime, if you'd like to listen to more Bible studies from Pastor Doug, you can find all of his teachings from Genesis to Revelation on the Calvary Chapel of Delta mobile app. Just go to your app store and search for CC Delta. That's CC Delta to download it for free. And again, be sure to come back next time to see what happened as David did things God's way, right here on Learn the Word.